Hey, YouTube. Cheers. We just watched a couple of playoff games. Alabama, Georgia, they're inevitable. Whatever. Watch it, like it, enjoy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. The one thing that you should do, the first thing you should do in 2022 is like the video.
Here's the thing. If these teams played 1,000 times, Georgia would beat us 1,000 times. 1,000 times. The last 2 weeks or last month since we beat Ohio, kind of false bravado. Great season for Michigan, more than I ever could have thought. And guess what? I like Georgia. I think Georgia can go beat Alabama. I'm going to sleep easy at night, knowing we got as far as we could ever be. Hopefully it's the beginning of something special. Beating Ohio State, still a winning season for us. Yeah, that's not where we want to be as Michigan as a program, but we haven't had something to smile about in so long. So even though we just lost by 1,000, the last month being able to gloat and brag on Twitter versus Ohio for the first time in 2 decades felt good. Bottom line is this: nothing that matters in 2021 matters in 2022. The year is about to end. Cheers to all the Stoolies. Yeah, it sucks we lost. I'll sleep easy tonight knowing we went as far as we possibly could. So, Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Everybody be merry, happy. Don't get COVID. Fuck COVID. Cheers to you, and hopefully to a great 2022.
Guys, I'm just looking for my notes. I'm sorry.
No, honestly, that was a great cold open because I actually loved that emergency press conference more than I think I've liked most of them, because he didn't even try to spin it. He was just like, yeah, we fucking sucked.
No, nothing you could spin right there. I can't find my notes, so I'm just going to have to go note free. That sucks.
We're drinking wine. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's literally New Year's Eve. It's about to be the new year. We just listened to Dave do an emergency press conference. We all have drinks in our hand. By the way, before we start the podcast, should we all cheers to 2022?
Have we already started the podcast?
Well, of course, we're going to put that in the cold open. Are you kidding?
All right. Let's do this. Hold on. Hi, welcome to Unnecessary Reference. Before we go any further, Happy New Year. Cheers, everybody.
Happy New Year. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Jack has the High Noon, which sponsors the show. The High Noon Hard Seltzer. They are fantastic. Just because it's New Year's, a special occasion, I've got white wine. Looks like Kayce's got red wine, and Katie has something.
Some really sweet Moscato that you guys would hate.
She's trying red wines, okay? We're getting her close. Katie, Katie, this is actually the red wine you got me for Christmas, so thank you very much.
Hell yeah.
All right. And I hope you guys are enjoying the gift that me and Kayce got you for Christmas.
Well, I did get them a gift for Christmas, so.
I know. I was hoping to get in on that.
I texted you about it. You didn't answer me.
I figured I was just in it. So whatever she gave you, Merry Christmas.
I haven't given it to him yet, so add to it.
So like nothing.
And I also I text Jack and Katie both and said, "Hey, I'm sorry that I can't be at the office to give you the gift because I've contracted."
Well, watch this, Kayce. Watch this. Watch me drop the mic on you.
Has he already given it to you guys?
I haven't seen Jack yet, but I gave Katie a gift.
He did.
Brandon, if you give me a gift, I'm giving it back to you.
Was it a good gift, Katie?
It was a good gift. It was got a little sentimental message with it. I got appreciation.
Oh.
Cheers.
Cheers, Brandon. I'm proud of you. Where's my gift?
The Grinch has a heart. So,
you're not the Grinch. Anyone that calls you the Grinch is wrong.
Listen, we just watched 2 playoff games, and a lot of years we get one good playoff game, one shitty playoff game. Well, this year we got 2 shitty playoff games. But there's a lot of consternation on Twitter. We're headed towards a Georgia-Alabama national title. There's a lot of arguing. There's a lot of saying this playoff is bad, this is that, this is that. No, what the playoff is designed to do is have 4 teams play so that we can get the 2 best teams in the country to play for a national title. Guess what's going to happen next Monday night? The best 2 teams in the country will play for a national championship. And it's unfortunate they happen to call the same conference home. It's unfortunate they've already played. It's unfortunate that there's nothing really exciting about the matchup. But they're the best 2 teams in the country, period. We'll get to Georgia, we'll get to Cincinnati, and we'll get to Michigan, and we'll get to what it means for those programs. But we watched Alabama beat the hell out of Cincinnati, and we watched Georgia beat the hell out of Michigan. And here we are.
And everybody that's on Twitter crying about it, it's like, oh, it's the SEC. It's always the SEC. I mean, this is, and I joked about it when I was tweeting, but it was like, this was my time to try to go against the SEC. Like, what am I doing? If you look at, other than when Ohio State has been really good, like the SEC has run the playoff since it started. That's just a fact. And Brandon, I believe you said it on Twitter too. It's like, hopefully the NIL, and I mean, again, as a school in the SEC, I don't want to see it completely change, but what we're seeing is until something changes, the SEC are going to get the best players. They're going to have the best teams. They have the best coach in the league. And now you're going to see an Alabama-Georgia matchup again, which we can make our predictions now or later. I don't know, but I think we're going to see the same thing. I think we're going to see Alabama win a national championship, and there we go.
All right, well, let's go ahead and split right now because Georgia's about to win their first national championship since 1980.
I mean, hey, listen, I'm okay with that. I told Jack before we started recording, and I mean, I know I said it last podcast, and I've talked about it, like he was my Benedict Arnold, he was my Judas, he was all of that because he went against me with the Michigan take. I mean, I could not have been more wrong about what happened against Michigan and Georgia. It's still going right now. There's like a couple minutes left. It's 34-3. Disgusting display. I just can't see Kirby Smart beating Alabama, but I mean,
Here's the thing, Kayce.
be there.
Georgia's played 14 football games this year. 12 of them have been utterly dominant. One of them was a 10-3 win over Clemson, and one of them was a loss that I still can't explain to Alabama. What we saw tonight was Georgia. Nakobe Dean flying across the field, making every tackle on the man. Quay Walker killing people. Jordan Davis at 6'8", 360, moving like a cat. Like, that was the Georgia defense that we saw for 12 games.
Brandon,
Yeah.
there was a tweet. When Quay Walker committed to Georgia, he did the fake out with his hat, and he faked out Tennessee fans. And I tweeted out, and Tennessee Twitter got a hold of it in 2018. Someone reminded me of it tonight, and the replies to it are unbelievable. If you want to go check them out, it's all VFL saying we're not going to forget this. Karma's coming this guy's way, and now he's one of the best players in the country. He looked great tonight. Quay Walker was like, we knew about Nakobe Dean, we knew about Jordan Davis, we knew about the Georgia defense, but Quay Walker's was great tonight. And I mean, we'll get to breakout stars today, but Georgia. And then I also want to say, you guys have to give Kirby Smart some credit.
Of course, we do.
Okay,
Jack.
no, I know you're not going to. I just wanted to, because we talked about it last podcast.
I do have to give him credit. However, and I know Brandon just said he thinks they're going to be the national champions, which you did say earlier in the season, which credit to you. I said if he was playing Nick Saban in this game, I think it goes differently. He was playing Jim Harbaugh, which, by the way, I would like it before we even start anything else. I loved that he was. I know they lost. They got their asses kicked. I loved that he was on the field with receiver gloves on. I thought it was fucking hilarious.
So we're going to take that's fine. I kind of always like when coaches do player things. We're going to go game by game. Let's start with the later game. Okay.
Michigan just scored, and Andrew Anthony celebrated. It was bizarre.
Well, that's an 18-year-old freshman. That's an 18-year-old freshman who's
okay. You know what? You're right.
No, but no. Yeah, you're right, but still, it doesn't matter. Now he's on the sidelines, and everybody's like patting him on the helmet and on the ass. It's like, do you not see the fucking score, my guy?
Oh, they went
but here's the thing: if you guys have been running around getting your head knocked in by Georgia's defense all night, finally getting in the end zone probably feels like they've reached like freedom.
They just had an orgasm or something.
It's just, listen.
They went for 2. They got it, but who cares?
So it's 34-11.
Yes.
Yeah. What did I get the over? Like, it depended where you got it, but
yeah, it was by kickoff is at 46.5. I got it at 45.5. So
I got it at
right there. No more scores. But my big takeaway from Georgia, Michigan was how soft is Ohio State? Like Michigan showed up to Ann Arbor a month ago and just bullied the shit out of Ohio State. And they showed up in Miami tonight and tried to bully Georgia, but you can't bully a bully. That whole game plan, like, remember 3 hours ago when everybody thought it was cool on Twitter and the Michigan offensive line walked out of the locker room wearing run the damn ball shirts and how tough they were? That shit didn't last very long at all.
It sure didn't. And on top of that, how soft Ohio State was that Aiden Hutchinson and company could just bully the fuck out of CJ Stroud in this offense that we thought was so good. I mean, and Aiden Hutchinson is still one of the best players in the country.
Yeah, nothing. And I even made a wisecrack about it on Twitter. I assume that Georgia really game planned specifically for Aiden Hutchinson. Then the other defensive end, Nicabo didn't make that much of an impact either. Aiden Hutchinson was getting close. Stetson Bennett, we'll get to him also. Stetson Bennett throws some great balls under pressure, man.
But tonight, like they were showing. Go ahead, Brandon. If you're listening, this is another reason to watch YouTube. Brandon can't contain himself right now. He doesn't want to let us talk, so I'm going to just let this breathe for a second. Brandon, go ahead.
Will Anderson greater than Aiden Hutchinson. There's no question about it. It's over. Will Anderson greater than Aiden Hutchinson.
And
when you look at the conferences, you have to say that. Yes.
Yeah, and it's 1-2. Yeah.
But right. It is 1-2. Yeah, they're the best two defensive ends in the country. Whatever.
But it is very interesting to see now, like when and they've showed the replays all night that Aiden Hutchinson, who, but by the way, before the game, I loved all the still shots, I loved all the slow motion, everything else. Like he's been non-existent for the most part, not because he's not good, because Georgia knew what to do.
Oh my God, Brandon.
Well, it's going to go over.
I mean, they ran it. They're inside Michigan's 40 right now.
That's fine.
Georgia is just. I mean, again,
they could. Though the clock's going to keep running.
I wouldn't worry about that. I parlayed Georgia and Alabama to the hilt, so I am good. That under is a small.
Brandon, can I ask you a question? As an SEC guy, can I ask you a question? So, I went to a bar earlier to watch the first game, and then a little bit of the second game, and I made sure that I didn't drink too much because last year when we did a bowl podcast, Katie, the Orange Bowl, it was a disaster. So I was like, okay, I'll wait. The first game, a guy was clearly cheering for Alabama, which I was too, because that's who I bet. The second game, I could hear him from the other side of the bar. He's cheering for Georgia. And I'm like, that's interesting. I'm sure that's who he's bet. I looked down. He's wearing a Tua Tagovailoa jersey. And I was like, this is why people hate the SEC. This guy is sitting there wearing a literal Tua jersey, cheering for Georgia, like loudly, like making a scene in the bar. And it's like, I understand if you've bet on him, that's fine. But like, you're wearing an Alabama jersey. Like that would be like me cheering for Texas wearing an A&M jersey in a bar.
So he was doing the SEC thing. He also believes they're going to beat Georgia, no problem, because they already did it. So he's wrong, but that's what he believes.
But like, I don't like.
He probably bet on him. He probably bet on him.
But like to me, and I know Alabama and Georgia aren't like straight up rivals like traditionally, but right now they are because of like the top tier of the SEC. That would be like to me, you sitting there in a Dak Prescott jersey and you're watching Ole Miss play and cheering for Ole Miss.
What do you want me to say? He was a grown man wearing a Tua jersey. He wasn't very bright. That's all I gotta say.
Fair. All right, I'll take it.
Just a dumb human being. I don't think today. We'll talk about it. I don't think today was about Michigan and Cincinnati. Today was about Georgia. The worst thing that ever happened to Michigan was Georgia getting embarrassed. The worst thing that ever happened to Michigan was Georgia getting manhandled by Alabama, because that made Georgia look in the mirror and say, you know what? We coasted for 12 games. We got to come out and bust somebody in the fucking face. We got to come out and play our football. And that's what they did from the start tonight. And you can talk about Stetson Bennett, and he played very, very well. I thought their offensive game plan in the first half was remarkable. It was pass on the edge, pass on the edge, pass on the edge. Oh, they creep up, pass downfield, pass down. Like they were very smart about how they were attacking the Michigan defense because of this. And this was the difference in both teams, both games. Michigan couldn't match their speed sideline to sideline.
Nope.
And Cincinnati couldn't match Alabama's speed sideline to sideline. That's why the wide passes work for Georgia. That's why when they threw it downfield, it worked. Just there's a speed difference in these elite, and the SEC is not an elite conference this year, but the top SEC teams every year are the most elite teams in the country because of the talent they got. And Georgia showed that tonight.
And that's what's like the way that you just phrased that is what's so crazy is that we talked about last episode. If we were going to say there was going to be one blowout versus another one, we picked the wrong game. We all picked the wrong game for what the blowout is. And you said it showed that Alabama's offense and defense is superior to Cincinnati and obviously Georgia to Michigan. Cincinnati's a group of 5 team, and Cincinnati granted it was a disgusting game and it was boring and it was slow and whatever else, but like Cincinnati would make sense for them to get blown out by Alabama's talent.
Yeah.
Michigan getting blown out by Georgia's talent doesn't make sense to me.
I'll say this. I know people saw what they saw, but Cincy certainly belonged. I mean, Cincy didn't embarrass themselves. I didn't think
No.
Cincinnati embarrassed themselves at all. Cincy got handled. I know we're jumping around from game to game, but Cincy got beat by a superior team of superior athletes, but they did not embarrass themselves. They did not embarrass a group of 5. And they did not embarrass the committee to put them in.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it was 21 point loss.
Right.
But when we talked about this going into it, and I think all 4 of us, not all 4 of us, anybody said, if you're going to pick one blowout between these 2 games, I mean, I know when I was sitting at the bar today, it was like, okay, well, the first game's going to suck. We'll get through this boring ass game. We'll watch the second game and it's going to be great. And I was home by halftime because it didn't matter. But that's the point, is that like Cincinnati didn't embarrass themselves. They only lost by 21 to the number 1 team in the country as a group of 5 team. Michigan, who destroyed Ohio State, just got embarrassed by a team who got embarrassed by Alabama. That doesn't make sense to me.
Isn't this a remarkable opportunity for Kirby Smart? Like Kirby Smart, remember when they were 12-0, and you asked the question more than anybody, to your credit, Kayce. You would often say, can it be this easy? Can it be this easy that they're just going to come out and beat everybody like this? That's why you picked Alabama to beat them in the title game. And that's exactly what happened. But Georgia could have gone in the tank. Georgia could have absolutely just showed up today and not been inspired. But they didn't. Now they get their second shot. What an opportunity for Kirby Smart in his best year ever to get knocked down and say, you know what? I'm not that fucking guy. I get another chance at Nick Saban this year. I'm going to beat him. It's a great story.
It's a great story, and you're 100% right. Like, this is one of those, like, you know, if we're going to be sentimental and cute because it's the holidays, this is where they make that kind of movie where it's like, this guy could never beat him, could never do it, gets embarrassed in the SEC championship game, and then goes to the national title. And that's why I said that I truly believe, and I mean, obviously it doesn't matter because in retrospect, we don't know, but I truly believe that if somehow Alabama and Georgia had been paired in the semifinal, we would see something completely different. Now that they're in the national title again, and there's going to be so many people complaining about it, like, oh, again, it's Alabama, it's Georgia. The people that are complaining about it don't realize how much pressure is on Kirby Smart to win this game. I mean, the people that don't actually watch college football are going to be like, oh, great, Georgia and Alabama again. It's like, no. This is everything to Kirby Smart. This is everything to Georgia, because now it's the ghost of Christmas past that's sitting there that he's able to beat, and it's right in front of his face.
It was also, and Jack pointed this out earlier, what a great redemption story arc for Stetson Bennett. Like I saw him absolutely shit his pants against Alabama and not keep up with Bryce Young in the first game. And now tonight he had a couple moments where it was like, what's he doing? But it didn't hurt the team. But his athleticism, when he gets outside the pocket, like he can run. And was it Holly Rowe? They did a sideline report right after he did a 3rd and 6 and he got it. And he goes, yeah, guys, Stetson Bennett's a sneaky great athlete. No. He's not. He's just a great athlete.
Yeah, he was like all state in baseball and ran sprints.
She literally said, he's a sneaky great athlete. Not only is he a great football player, but he was all state in baseball and he ran track. And he said, okay, well, that's not a sneaky athlete. He was on every sport. That's pretty in your face.
Can I please, I just want to say something a little low key under the radar. Yeah. I know how I texted you last night about how you feel about a certain broadcaster.
Right.
I feel that way about that certain broadcaster. So let's just leave it like, let's leave it there.
Hey,
are you just using Fleischmann on this? Like,
what? Yeah, your hair just keeps getting wetter and wetter by the pod.
I got something to say.
Stop. You're making it worse.
I got something to say. I got something to say when we're talking about broadcasters, Kayce. And I want you to let me get through the whole thing.
I know, but can we ask you why you look like you just took a shower as we're sitting on this podcast?
Your hair was dry AF before.
It was nice. It had good volume, and now it's just
fine.
It looks like a certain to do.
Kayce, I love you. Okay.
Oh no.
By extension, I love your friends. So if I ever met Laura Rutledge, me and her would be great friends. Kayce, I didn't like what she was wearing tonight. She's a beautiful and wonderful broadcaster and fantastic, and she's the best. I didn't like what she's leaving. Okay, Kayce's leaving. I love it. She's great. She's the best sideline reporter in the game. What if she came back and Laura Rutledge was beside her? That would be awesome. All right, fine. Is that her middle finger? Oh yeah, sure.
Yes, Brandon.
Well, the way it was turned, it looked like it was her index. All right, fine. We won't have to.
You know what? Guess what? You think Laura Rutledge gives a fuck what Brandon Walker thinks she's wearing about?
I certainly do not. I certainly do not.
You can't tell me she didn't look beautiful tonight. Shut the fuck up.
I didn't say that. Katie, what did you have something to say?
Katie, say it.
It's off topic, so I'll come back to it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the line for next game is up.
Oh, what is it?
I don't think it's worth talking about because it'll change so much. What is
Yeah,
it?
but I actually want to know.
As of right now, though, what do you think it is? I'll tell you what do you think it is?
Between 1 and 3, and I think Georgia's probably favored.
Yeah, Georgia's favored.
I think Georgia's favored by 3.5.
It's
No,
right
I'd
now
say 2.
on the sports book. It's 2.5 Georgia.
Makes sense. Everyone's going to be like, Bama, 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 but I mean, like, I think that makes sense. And then, yeah.
Let me tell you the better bet here. Don't worry about the spread. Don't worry about that. This second game, that first one was what, 41-27? This one's going to be 17-10. This is going to be a fucking war. I think this one will not be as high scoring.
Why? Why do you say that?
I just think Georgia's defense will take this personally. We saw a better Georgia defense today.
Okay.
And I don't think, without Mechie, I don't know that you can stretch the field the way you did the first time.
All right. Yep.
And Alabama's defense is playing. I mean, Michigan just scored a touchdown, but otherwise, if they hadn't scored that garbage time touchdown, we would have had 2 playoff games and nobody could score a touchdown against the SEC.
No, I could see it, and they'll probably take a different approach defensively.
Oh yeah.
I think they almost, in that first game, it was weird. And it was also, I think there's a lot to say about, they almost thought that they like had won the game walking in the door, like walking in the building.
Right.
And I didn't want to believe it, but Alabama as an underdog is it's almost as if you're never an underdog and someone says you're an underdog, that's almost the best place to be an underdog. If you're an underdog your whole life, you're used to it. Alabama has never been used to it ever. And so I guess they're an underdog again. They'll say that, but in the press, in the office, in the America, they won't be an underdog.
You're right, but they remember they tried to pull that game this week where Will Anderson was like, we're the underdog in this game. And Bryce Young, the former 5-star recruit and the Heisman Trophy winner as a freshman, was like, yeah, I've been doubted my whole life. No, you haven't.
He's a top 20. He's a top 25 recruit ever, like in the history of 24/7 sports.
He was the number 2 Heisman favorite coming in the year, and he had never taken an important snap of football. And
he went to like the high school of high schools in California, beautiful high school. Like Bryce Young, it's fine. Like athletes want to be doubted. It's like the demon time thing. It's like, like no one ever believed in me. Like, no, everyone's always believed in you. In 8th grade, you looked like you looked like a senior in high school. Like,
but can't you understand though why those guys like they take that mentality on? Because like, what are they supposed to say as
it's so corny though. It's so corny.
All right, now let's focus. We got to do something. Real quick.
Well, I just also roasted you on Twitter. I'm going to be honest.
I saw it. Before we move on to Cincinnati, Alabama, as we're kind of bouncing back and forth here, this loss does nothing to damage what Michigan accomplished this year, right?
I agree.
Well,
hold on.
It's embarrassing in the moment, but Michigan came in and they were, what did they say tonight? They were 100-1 to win to make the playoff or something this year.
Here's my question for you. Here's my question. And this is the way that I look at it, because as somebody who's been, and Jack knows since the day we started doing a podcast together, as an Oklahoma apologist for years, and now all year I've been on Michigan, my first thought was like, this is what I do is I find these teams that I'm like, oh my God, I think that they're going to be so good. And then they get to the playoff. I don't think they're going to be good. I never thought Oklahoma could hang. I truly believed Michigan could, because I thought Michigan was that team. I didn't necessarily know if they would beat Alabama, but the fact that they got beat 34-11, I think it does say something about Michigan. Like and this is coming from somebody who loved Michigan all year, is that you can't come to the playoff. You can't come to the biggest finale that you've been on in a long time and get beat the fuck out of.
You're right, but college football is a process. It's always a process. And even though it's been there a while, you don't become Alabama and Georgia overnight. You have to have elite recruiting classes over a 4 and 5 year period to do it. This was a building block season for Michigan because the first thing they had to do to get back on the national radar was take that rivalry and make it matter. Actually beat Ohio State. They had to take the veil of Ohio State off their face, and now they can see again. Now they're on even playing field with Ohio State. And that team is young. That quarterback that threw the touchdown, that's a freshman. That Andrell Anthony, freshman. Haskins, a young guy, I think. Like, there's a lot of youth on that team. They'll be back. But the first thing they had to do this year was get on even playing field with Ohio State. They've done that. They're not on even playing field with Alabama and Georgia right now, but they will be if they keep getting back to this spot.
But that's the thing with, and like we said earlier, that now looks at not just because we saw what happened with Clemson and they still had a great season in comparison to most team seasons, but them not making the playoff because they didn't have Trevor Lawrence, they didn't have all those guys. Like, now you're looking at it and you're like, okay, so these teams like Oklahoma, like Clemson, like Ohio State, like Michigan, they can't, if they're not playing to their absolute best, they're not going to beat the SEC. They're not. I mean, that like
no, they're not. You got to play your best. Yeah,
us being SEC homers, like that's just a fact.
I still cling to my first take that I had before this game. I think the 4 week break hurt Michigan more than it hurt anybody else. They were peaking. They're like the Cade McNamara who played the last 3 weeks from Michigan and the Cade McNamara that played tonight. Two totally different players.
Totally different. And I know that, I mean, we talked about it earlier in the podcast, like Bryce Young didn't even have to play that well. And they still were able to beat Cincinnati because it was Cincinnati. But Cade McNamara, if they were going to beat Georgia tonight, he had to play like the guy that beat Ohio State, and he couldn't do it.
Well, their offensive line had to dominate. They did not, even a little bit. Their running backs had to create separation. They didn't. Their quarterback had to play well. Like, everything they had to do just didn't fucking happen. Let's go ahead and transition to Cincinnati because they lost to Alabama 27-6. And I'm getting tweets like, or I see on Twitter, just like y'all see, no, this will be the last time we ever see a Power 5 team or non-Power 5 team in the playoff. And I'm like, why? No. I mean, they didn't do anything Notre Dame hasn't done. They didn't do anything Michigan didn't do tonight. They didn't do anything Oklahoma doesn't do. When you get to the elite level of football, there's often one or two teams that have just separated, and that's what happens. And that's why having a 4-team playoff isn't an actual indicator of the season that college football has. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute.
I think that those takes were mostly made before the second game. I think most of those takes were like, oh, Cincinnati will never see a group of 5. And then Michigan goes out and gets their dicks kicked in. And then they're like, well, actually, we might see a group of 5 back. I saw all of those takes too. I don't think you're going to see near as many of those takes tomorrow because the biggest storyline is going to be the fact that the Big Ten just got their shit kicked in by the SEC, Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, the whole thing. And Cincinnati, while they did lose by 3 scores, which is a lot, they still hung in better than Michigan hung in against Georgia, who got their dicks kicked in against Alabama.
I have to tweet.
What's a tweet?
Yeah, I have to tweet because my bet hit today, my SEC parlay, and I got to tweet something about it.
Hey, do you know who scored the first touchdown in the Alabama-Cincinnati game?
Yeah, Slade Bolden.
Do you know what his odds were on the Barstool?
Yeah, because I think he was like 1,800.
And guess who bet?
I bet Jaleel Billingsley and I bet Bryce Young both at 1,900. And when they threw Slade Bolden down by the goal line, my heart just sank. I was like,
I bet Slade Bolden, and like, the person that I bet it with, like I wanted to make sure that it wasn't like because I was like, okay, well, there's multiple white tight end looking guys. Like, let's make sure. And as soon as it happened, we were like, let's fucking go. Like that. It was the most beautiful moment. Well, it's the only beautiful moment I had for the rest of the day because the rest of my bets just hit or didn't hit and they fucking stank.
You remember that touchdown Slade Bolden scored on? They had a 3-receiver stack over there, and it was Jamison Williams, followed by Jaleel Billingsley, followed by Slade Bolden. I was like, one of them's about to score a touchdown. and Jamison Williams ran in the end zone, and everybody from Cincinnati said, oh, I'm going to get him. And it's just there's Slade Bolden just hanging out, chilling in the cut.
Chilling.
The scary part about Alabama today was, no, I'll say that in a minute. Cincinnati proved one thing to me. across the board, they were not as talented as Alabama. But there were pockets of Cincinnati that absolutely belonged on the field with Alabama. Their defensive backs, Kobe Bryant and Sauce Gardner, handled Alabama. They were great. They were fantastic. At times, their defensive line got pass rusher and was able. Their defensive ends were able to get pass rusher. They belonged, and there were certain moments Jerome Ford, the running back, belonged. Across the board, they didn't belong on the field with them because you have to factor in, like, Cincinnati's offensive line was just, I mean, they were just outclassed, period. And Desmond Ridder, great career, it just wasn't his night. But there were pockets of Cincinnati, and that's how hard it is, because as good as their defensive backs are, Alabama's got that talent right across the board.
Right. And that's what we said. And we've talked about this a million times, which is why the group of five versus a Power Five team in the playoff is always going to be tough, because there's a reason those guys, most of those guys, are playing for a G5 team versus playing for a Power Five team. And so there's a lot of guys on Cincinnati that if they could have, they would be playing for an Alabama. They would be playing for a Georgia. They would be playing for Michigan, and they weren't. So you're right, but there were a lot of moments in that game, even though it was so boring. It was so boring. But it was like, okay, Cincinnati is not completely out of the question. And yes, losing by 21 points in general, no matter what it is usually not great. But if you actually watch that football game, it was like they hung in enough. Like, I truly believed when Alabama came out for the second half, it was about to be like a 70-point blowout. I was like, they're about to absolutely destroy this team.
Yeah,
and
but
Cincinnati hung in.
You know what sucks about Alabama, scary about Alabama?
They didn't have to try.
Their great receiver, Jameson Williams, didn't have a great game. Their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback tonight was running for his life. So all they did, they just turned around and gave it to the 5-star running back who ran for 220 yards.
Just didn't even have to try. Like, they won by 3 touchdowns and didn't even have to try. But that's the thing about playing a team that's not even a Power Five team. And I'm not taking anything away from Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati held their own. If you take between Cincinnati and Michigan, who played a better game tonight, you obviously take Cincinnati. I mean, there's no question about that.
You know what's amazing? We just had an entire college football season and a coaching carousel recruiting season.
Yes.
And Florida came open, Oregon came open, Notre Dame came open, Virginia Tech came open, USC came open. And Luke Fickell just built a playoff team in Cincinnati, and he's just sitting there. Like
how much does he make? Jack or Katie, do you know that? I mean, again, like, where I'm like, how much is he making?
Coaching staff tonight called that game like a bunch of pussies. That was an awful performance.
Jack just said they're pussies straight
up. That was an awful performance. I still think Luke Fickell's a good coach. Great program builder, probably should have been considered at some of those jobs. Maybe he was, and he decided he didn't want to go. I'm sure that Notre Dame made a call to him. I'm sure some others made a call to him. However, Brandon keeps, for those listening, Brandon keeps spraying his. Anyways, he's like literally his hair is so wet.
Why is your hair so? By the way, Jack, that sounded disgusting.
But
Brandon, why is your hair so wet?
No, because he's spraying. On the Cincinnati coaching staff, they called that game like a bunch of pussies. They had one downfield pass and it was completed. And then also all of their play calls after timeouts were awful. And they, when they lost that game,
the first
pass that Desmond drive. Yeah, when Desmond Ritter's pass got that got batted down when he was throwing it to Pierce. But
and that's what made them draw up and start calling like pussy. Like, they had that, and then they threw it another one that could have been caught. And on third down, they called a tight end screen at the 10-yard line. That's not going to work.
But they called that game as if everything broke right for them to kind of stay in it, except for the fact if they fell on that fumble on the punt, that would have been big. But then they intercepted the ball at their own 45-yard line. Then that upcoming drive, they called it like a bunch of pussies. If I was a Cincinnati fan, I would be ashamed of tonight. Ashamed.
But Jack, also though, it's a true moment of, wouldn't you be a fucking pussy if you're playing?
No, I wouldn't. You're an underdog. If you lose 52-10, why does it matter?
I guess you're right. I guess
You
you're
know,
right.
like-
I feel like if you're gonna play scared against fucking Goliath, like you're always gonna play
But
scared.
why?
I think it's in the
David
middle.
didn't.
You're right. David didn't.
Okay, fair.
David,
Jack,
he
cheers.
reached down that bag, he picked out a stone, and he just went to business.
You see, you got to throw the stones.
Jack, that might have been your best line in 2.5 years of this podcast.
Literally, that is like when we do our best of. If that's not the opening, I don't even care.
But I think it's in the middle. Like they could have opened it up more, but like they got one quarterback who's got one life. They might have got him killed. They might have got him killed.
I mean, it's just not even close, Jack. Like you're looking at like Desmond Ridder running for his life, but then you look at who he's running for his life against. Like you can't just let him fly. You can't just open it up and let him go.
But you know what? To Jack's point, though, he's a senior. You're not going to need him anymore. Just let him get killed. It's fine.
But why would the
Walker.
fact, what I would love to know, and maybe someone more smarter about football can point this out to me. Their best drives were the first drive of the game,
Yeah.
their first drive of the game, and their first drive out of half. Why?
Yes.
Like, what was different? Did they script those plays? But what?
Yes.
Like, what's? I don't know.
And
That's a
I'm
genuine
not smarter.
question.
I'm not saying I'm smarter than you at football because I'm definitely not. But like that has to be the answer. What else could be the answer?
But ultimately, it would have gotten back to their problem, even if they've been called better. And those first couple of drives, that first drive for Alabama, the first drive for Cincinnati, they looked like even teams. But Alabama was like Novocaine. They were just going to keep handing it to Brian Robinson and keep pounding, and they were going to suffocate Cincinnati eventually, no matter what the calls were on offense.
Jack, you're right. Like the first call of each half were their best. Why do they keep not doing it? And I think it's because the talent just couldn't match up. And I think that's what we've all thought was going to happen. I think Alabama's defense just knew what they were going to do and vice versa. But again, I think Cincinnati as a whole proved the fact that that G5 should be in the playoff. Now, if you asked me that 4 hours ago, I would have said no.
Well, I think it's case by case. If there's, I mean, that Cincinnati, that group of five teams certainly belong.
Yes. But if Michigan would have at least made somewhat of a fucking game of this second game, then maybe I would have been like, no. We don't need any more G5 teams. But Michigan got beat so bad that it's like, well, I mean, if Michigan can get beaten this bad, why not?
But it's not a Michigan problem. It's not a Cincinnati problem. And we do this every year. And we talk about these two teams that get beat. It's a parity problem. It's every February and every December, too many 5-stars are going to Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson. Like, it's a parity problem. When we get to 4 games left or 4 teams left, 2 of them have most of the talent, and this is going to happen. Like, there was nothing Cincinnati or Michigan were going to be able to do tonight. Nothing.
I definitely agree with you with Cincinnati. Definitely. Michigan should have hung in better than they did. Michigan has enough talent to hang.
I know where you're coming from with the season they had. They look like they should have, but
the fact that they're fucking Michigan.
But their problem was this: the matchup sucked for them because they faced a better version of themselves. Michigan's best self was lining up and knocking you in the face and running the ball down your throat, and that's Georgia, man. Georgia's just a slightly better version of that exact team.
By the way, Brandon, I know you're missing out on a program you're really going to be upset about. It's Tebow on the title game. If you'd like to tune in to ESPN right now, Tebow on the title game is on.
So let's start wrapping up because I got one more thing to talk about. We will obviously next week, maybe we'll eulogize Michigan, Cincinnati one more time.
Oh no, we're definitely going to because
all right. And
I Jack, can I please apologize one more time? I apologize for using slanderous names against you today. I didn't know which one I was going to use. I apologize.
No, it's all good.
We're going to eulogize them, but we're going to break down Alabama, Georgia for the millionth time again. But again, buffoons that don't understand college football don't realize how big of a deal this game is for Georgia.
Oh, I think they will. I mean,
people that don't watch college football don't, but I agree with you. The people that do, yes.
If you get, boy, If you're Kirby Smart and you get to a championship game against Saban in 2017, you lose it, fine. And then if you lose the SEC title game this year, okay. But boy, if he loses this one, I mean,
Let's not forget the last few times Georgia and Alabama played. Take out the regular season game last year, which was during the COVID. Forget about it.
Right.
National championship game. Tua comes in, throws a pass to an unknown freshman named Devontae Smith, who then goes on to an Heisman. Then they play in the SEC championship in 2018 or 19? The next year, actually, 2018. And then Tua has an ankle injury. Georgia is up in the game. Jalen Hurts comes in the game after kind of being not shunned by Alabama, but he was benched for Tua.
Demoted.
And he comes in and has an amazing game and leads on the victory. Then obviously the SEC championship a few weeks ago, we saw Bryce Young have his, I would say, Heisman moment and like kind of Alabama's over. Wait a second. No, they're not.
No, they're not. And Jack, I had that conversation with people who I was watching the game with tonight. They were like, wait, did like Tua come in and what? I was like, here's the thing, is that like Tua came in for Jalen and won, and then Jalen had to come back in for Tua to do the same thing in the SEC championship.
Also, if Tua never came into that game, there was, who knows if it's just a rumor, but he may have left Alabama, and who knows how the college football landscape looks after that.
All right. So I got one final take to fire off here tonight.
Well, I can't believe you haven't made your hair wetter after it looks like you've literally taken a shower during this podcast.
Does Jack have a date at HQ?
No. It was Spider. It was Spider.
Brandon, literally every single person needs to.
No, I understand that you do. I know what you've got in store.
It's 11:20. We're fine.
We're fine. I got one more take. And I was arguing with Big T on Twitter, which Big T, the saddest man in the world. But anyway.
Oh.
The answer here, guys.
He's sad. He deserves to be sad.
But people are acting like, oh, if these are blowouts, then we never need to expand the playoff. That's the dumbest argument ever. Adding 8 more teams to this would add intrigue. It would add a layer of at least, I mean, listen, if we had a round a week ago where we saw Pitt and Michigan State play, which they wouldn't match up, but let's say they did, that Pitt-Michigan State game, which was good anyway. What if we saw it with Stakes and we saw it with Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Walker? We need more teams in the playoff. And if we're arguing about Georgia and Alabama having all the good recruits, expanding access to the playoff down the road, the money, the exposure is going to help the teams like Pitt, or who's in the top 12, Oklahoma States of the world, the Ole Misses of the world, the Notre Dames of the world, get more exposure, more money, and maybe they crack into that recruiting a little bit. What?
I forgot to ask you, Brandon, how did you feel about Ben Mintz doing the Ole Miss hype video tonight?
They want their fucking hype video to sound like it was done on Hee-Haw. Let them do it.
Mincy mentioned that a billion times to me. I'm sure everybody else in the office.
Oh, he mentioned it to me too, and I actually completely forgot about it till I was showing it tonight, and I was like, Brandon probably fucking hates this, you know?
There was no person in the world that was ready for that.
I mean,
we all knew like a month ago.
I'm not gonna watch an Ole Miss hype video, so I only know it from you telling me. So, it's time. Through 8 years, I think this is the 8th playoff. 4 doesn't work. 4 doesn't work. You know why 4 doesn't work? You know why 4 doesn't work? Because 4 is not a playoff. This isn't a playoff. This is 4 teams that usually 1 and 2 are going to be far away above everybody. But if you had 12 teams, that means you have 11 games. That means you're going to have exciting. Sure, maybe the end result is the same. Maybe Alabama's inevitable. But what if Baylor had a last-second touchdown to beat Notre Dame for the right to play Alabama? I mean, that's what we need. We got to open this thing the fuck up. 4 doesn't work.
No, 4 doesn't work. And like, I mean, you mentioned like how good some of these games have been. You talk about the Tennessee game, and I know we haven't given it credence. Like, that was an absolute touchdown. Like, I'm going to say that for all the Tennessee fans that are listening, that was 1000% a touchdown. Brandon, do you not agree with me?
Yeah. Well, somebody that had them in a parlay to win. Yes, that was a touchdown.
As a non-parlay fan, was it a touchdown?
I believe it was a touchdown. I've seen an obsession this year with refs retroactively saying his forward progress was stopped. That happened to Tennessee against Ole Miss, remember? That's the play in question where Matt Corral was sacked because he was just standing there and they said his forward progress was stopped. But they didn't stop the play. They let it play out. And they didn't stop that play yesterday, but they came back and said his forward progress was stopped. Like, that's kind of bullshit. You know why? And Big T tweeted this. I'm going to give him credit. You know how I know his forward progress didn't stop? Because he kept going forward.
Because he just kept moving.
You're right. He kept going. Yeah, that was a touchdown. A great game. Again, imagine Purdue taking mistakes.
That's my point, is that like having 12 teams, and I know those two teams wouldn't have been in the conversation, but having 12 teams, you get that parity. You understand what happens. And I know my team couldn't play because of COVID, but like my A&M versus Wake Forest today would have been a way better game versus like it just all of those things that come into play. When you think about Alabama is now going into the national championship, the only game they lost is to A&M. They couldn't play because of COVID. Hopefully COVID can fuck itself next year, but we need a 12-team playoff. That's what we need. And Danny Cannell can fuck himself.
Oh, that's a standing order from this podcast. Yes.
Do you guys think that 12 is the right number, or do you guys have another number?
I think 12 is fine. I like giving the 4 teams that stand above everybody else a bye. That works for me.
Same.
So I do like 12. Before we end this podcast, let's go around the room very quickly, and I'll just ask. We'll start Jack counterclockwise or whatever. Jack, who wins the national championship?
Georgia.
Katie, who wins the national championship?
I don't Georgia, but it's like 51-49 right now. I'm not sure.
Alabama.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about it. We got a week and a half or week and 3 days to talk about it. I believe Georgia will win the national title, but I know there's SEC fatigue, and I know this.
Fuck them though.
But that might have been the best title game we've had in this entire playoff. Georgia, Alabama, 2017. The overtime game to Devontae Smith. Was there another? What was a better one?
Well, the Clemson, Alabama ones were really
Alabama.
Good.
Okay. It was one of
here's the thing, Brandon.
2017 Georgia, Alabama was one of the best title games. It went to overtime.
You talk about SEC fatigue though, and I, again, as somebody who took Michigan, and I can't say this enough, is like, how can you talk about SEC fatigue anymore? Like, the SEC is so far superior to every other conference in this era that it's not even fucking close.
Wait, are you saying that as in the cream of the crop SEC, or the SEC from top to bottom?
The cream of the crop. Like, I'm talking about like when we
no, in general, but also, I mean, ACC.
The bowl season.
I mean, yes, Clemson for sure, but like
we can talk about the bowl season thing at the next podcast, like if it actually matters.
Different. I'm talking about the playoff. Like when we're
so since the playoff, one Big Ten, one ACC, then the rest SEC, right? So it's 2 to 5.
That's what I'm saying. Is like
I don't know.
I know. I'm just trying to think of.
I don't know who tweeted out the stat, but out of the last 16 championship games, the SEC has taken 18 spots. 18 spots out of the last 16 championship games. I believe that's right. Because that's ridiculous. They're averaging.
I'm sorry, you people don't want to hear SEC bias. Like, then get better fucking teams.
Over the last decade and a half, the SEC is averaging more than one team per first championship game. That's absurd. Anyway, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that next week. We got about 31 minutes left in 2021, and it was a good one for this podcast, I believe.
How was your wine?
Subpar.
Oh, well, that wasn't very nice. Mrs. Walker poured it nice and big for you.
Yeah, I bought it.
Oh, ew, gross.
Then you have no one to blame but yourself.
I know. I didn't. Fine. Anyway, to 2021, I believe we didn't have any major fights this year.
I don't think so.
I think that's wrong.
Do we have a major fight?
We did. No, I think we did.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Who fought this year?
You two.
That was this year?
Well, it's almost 2022. No fights in 2022 yet.
No, but I don't think we fought in 2021 either.
There was we don't have to say it right now. There was
Oh yeah.
there was
Remember that?
definitely a podcast that almost
Oh,
didn't get
yeah.
recorded.
Oh, yes. I stormed out of the gambling house. That wasn't that long ago. Boy.
And then it doesn't matter. We don't have to rehash it. What's the song? They were saying it like what's the song they play after it's New Year's?
Auld Lang Syne.
Oh, yeah.
No, the first thing, there's a lyric in it. It's like forget the past or whatever.
Oh no, neither Brandon nor I remembered it. So that's the best part.
That's
It's
good.
like,
you know,
what's good is when you don't remember the
The
fight.
turning point, a fork stuck in the road.
well,
Life grabs you by
Brandon and I
Shout
remember me slamming the door of the gambling house and telling him to fuck himself, then we're good. We're good.
the
the Roughnecks didn't see that one, but shout out to all of them for listening and
No, shout out.
Another question
figure that out.
at a time. Something unpredictable, but in the end, that's right. I hope you had the time of your life. See you in 2022.
Happy New Year.
Bye.